All right. So yeah, I just wanted to check and see and make sure that I was on. Like I said before, I'm a little poor right now. So I'm using let me not say that. That's not the proper language. A new computer and things is not in my budget at this time. So I'm kind of weighing it together. There may be a few problems with bandwidth. But I'm using my television as my second monitor just to make sure that everything looks good from the viewer's perspective. So I was waiting to see and make sure I was on the television. But hey, everybody. We are back for another Woman Chat Wednesday here on Level Up Single Mom. We have a really exciting, kind of spicy topic tonight. So I got the window open, y'all. It's warm weather, so you may hear cars going past. I live in the ghetto. It is what it is. Um, so I'm going to go ahead, play the intro, and then we'll get started. I cannot wait until I can get that to play smoothly on this thing. It's really cute. But however, like I said, welcome to Level Up Single Mom. This is the platform where we provide guidance and support for single mothers to self actualize with ease and grace. Here we use practical, real world solutions to the common pitfalls of single motherhood in the Black community and validation and camaraderie to offset the shame, isolation common to the experience of the Black single mother. My name is Kiana Footman. Some of you may know me as Vitamin Key. I am a licensed cosmetologist. I'm an author of, or the author of Level Up, the Single Mother's Guide to Reclaiming Her Dignity. I hope you can see this nicely. And I'm also a single mother. So tonight's episode, the topic of discussion is Mama Gotta Have a Life Too, basically. That's why I chose that thumbnail of Jody and his mom, because this is something that it gets talked about in the community, but not very much. Or I won't say it gets talked about. It doesn't get talked about in a real way for us single mothers to glean anything productive from the conversation. Usually talking about us in passing, talking smack about us, you know what I mean? Another form of judging us. All types of things get said, but nothing's really being discussed among us for our benefit and things like that. So I wanted to take a moment to dive into this discussion because, like I said, I wrote this book, The Single Mother's Guide to Reclaiming Her Dignity. There's a lot of things in this book that are more so focused on the effects that are mental and emotional as the mother and the primary caretaker of the children, how they affect the children. And so I kind of want to get started with a passage from the book just to kind of set the tone. And I also have something I want to watch. I don't know if I'm going to put that in. I'm going to read the passage from the book and then I'll figure out whether or not I want to put that in. There may be something we can discuss a little later. It goes along with it, but I'm not sure. But this is a passage from my book, Level Up, The Single Mother's Guide to Reclaiming Her Dignity. Many of us will loudly profess the pain that our mothers inflicted on us, yet can't make the correlation between the similarities in our romantic choices and how our children might be affected in similar ways to the ways we were. We have got to be better. We've got to do better because we have more of an opportunity than ever to learn better. Maybe our parents didn't teach us. Maybe our community didn't care for us to know. But it's our duty to learn and do better for our children's sake. Hi Yazzie Fruitcakes. How you doing, girl? So yeah, I just wanted to read that because, like I have mentioned before about my book, link in the description. I wrote this book as a means of helping single mothers to kind of get back to a baseline level of peace and just calm, because we're so inundated with messaging and subliminal and outright attacks, messaging that tell us that we're not worthy, messaging that tell us that, we really shouldn't hope for certain things, or we shouldn't believe that we are deserving of certain things. And that takes a toll. Like, it takes a toll on us mentally, it takes a toll on us physically. And I don't even want to go down that road, because that's going to be the subject of another live. But we were talking about it in a Discord earlier, about the effects that the constant stress puts on us. And they want to talk about our weight and things like that, and how stress affects your weight and all of that. But aside from that, it affects the way that we actually mother, the way that we show up within motherhood. And so, yeah, these clips are relevant in the face of that lead-in, because this speaks to the environment that we are in, the aura that surrounds us in our day-to-day dealings out in the world, and also with the interpersonal relationships with men. And since that is the focus of this discussion tonight, I'll go ahead and play it. So the first one, I want to kind of frame this under hypothetical versus practical, because a lot of people are throwing out what they are calling guidance, coaching, correction, medicine. They're giving it all kinds of names for criticism, shaming, blaming, abuse. But I want to talk about hypothetical versus practical advice. So specifically, when we're talking about males giving women advice on how to be women, how to be mothers, whatever, when you have conversation with them, they tend to like to keep it in the hypothetical realm. And I feel like the reason that they like to keep it in the hypothetical realm is because you can be very strict and stringent in hypotheticals. It's this or that. It's yes or no. You know what I mean? But when you're dealing with actual occurrences, when you're dealing with people's actual lived experiences, it's not always black and white. I work in customer service. So if I work at a company and we have a protocol in place that says, oh, well, you have to have these things in order to have this, let's say I'd work with 401ks. So they're like, oh, you have to have these particular types of paperwork in order to get your money out. But this person's like, oh, well, I can't get that paperwork because the person that would be able to sign off on that is dead. Or, you know what I mean? Like, there are always situations where it may not quite fit into that criteria. What do we do? So in the case of a major corporation that doesn't care, you know what I mean? They'll say, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. Those are our rules. And that's fine. Now, the thing is, the men will do that too. For instance, they'll sit and say, oh, well, women should be held to this standard. When they're doing these things, they should be categorized this way. And it doesn't matter how long ago it was. It doesn't matter what the circumstances were. If they did this thing, then that is who they are. That is indicative of who they are. And that's fine. But the point of contention for me is that you guys still want to interact with people. You know what I mean? Like, with women as individuals that can choose to interact with you or not under those conditions. And when you are interacting with someone, it matters what their opinion is of you. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't just matter that you get what you want from them, or most people who are whole, full people, and you're not a manipulative person. You kind of want to have the best interaction possible. And your criteria isn't necessarily just that you get what you want from them, but also that it's an overall pleasant experience. But, I'm going to play the clips because I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. So let me go to my clips. Give me a second here. Okay. So this one was the femicide one. 52 seconds. Sorry, y'all. I told you I'm new to this, so.
Some issues with this article. Nope, the rising murder rate has affected Black women across the country.
Hold on, sorry. I'm trying to. It's giving me
What Be Profit does is that
it's giving me what's this called? Advertisements.
Baltimore, Maryland recorded the highest ever number of.
There we go. Okay.
Where does that even come from?
If you can't hear it, please let me know.
I understand, but a lot of women, they don't. That's what I'm saying. There's a propensity or a habit of simply pandering and just comforting a woman and empathizing with a woman. That you can never do wrong. That you can never do wrong, right? And it's just like y'all perpetuate this mess to each other on a normal basis, and it's really sad. It's sad because even if this is my whole thing with women, like they attach themselves to their mistakes. Instead of saying, I need to be better, they kind of brush it off like, oh well, I'm not good enough. And then just continue the same cycle of those decisions. But I already did it, so because they feel like, oh, there's no coming back from it now, I'm just gonna keep doing it. That's where a lot of women mess up, and that's where I think that they, instead of telling yourself yeah, I may have messed up, but I can do better, and I want you to do better than me. Learn from my mistakes. Right. That's what you should be telling your friends. I really don't understand why you would kind of want to have a friend group that is low quality. And then at the same time,
okay, so I feel like that's enough of that, or that's enough for me to get the brunt of what I say. But the main aspect of that is that she's saying that women feel like once they made a mistake that they cannot do any better because they made the mistake, so all is lost. Correct. And she's saying that in the negative, and he's also he's also making that point that women shouldn't feel that way. They shouldn't feel like, oh, I made a mistake and so I can't do any better. Now, mind you, he's making that point right there, and I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. However, that's where the second clip comes in. Where is it? Oh, it's this. On 1 hour.
She will take a lot of the financial responsibility of the children. When you say reverence, give me some examples of things, and then Andrea, you're next, of what you think a woman should do or how she should behave, how she should act, being that, she's bringing, children that are not his, into the relationship.
For me, the biggest thing is the transition of us being in the same household, right? And so, obviously, I'm not going to run the household the way she ran it. As far as
I don't. Hold on.
Hey, why did this shouldn't say tonight? We got his kids here. They need to get them.
Not him. I'm gonna do 126.15. Okay. So not him. I like him, by the way. I like the way he speaks. I like the things he tends to say. But that's not, I want to piggyback off of the clip we just watched where the girl's pretty much saying women take on this mindset that they can't do any better because they made a mistake prior.
That's fair. What about you, Orange Peel? What are some things do you think a man would ask if she's bringing children into the relationship that the man's going to take the financial responsibility of mostly?
I would say, and for what I've seen in my own experience, anecdotal experience with many nurses I've worked with who are single mothers, I'm seeing more correlation of this. You got single mothers, especially ones who are making, because a lot of single mothers, they have to make more because they have, they're single mothers. They got children. They have to have extended amount of income, which could be enough just for them, the kids, and some vacation, stuff like that. But I think basically what I'm saying is that the single mothers that I see today have got to be a little more humble and have to check the ego a little bit, in my opinion. And I think there's an ego going on because with a lot of single mothers, as far as their income is concerned, we're just starting to get to their head a little bit. And then it's starting to make men look like they're not necessarily necessity, more of an add-on if they need it. When in reality, I see a lot of them look tired and working mad hours. They still feel like a man is just, he's an add-on. If a man were to come in my life, I think a lot of you got to lower the ego because what would attract a man to that? I see a lot of that, especially in the medical field, nurses especially, with the money they're making, even though they got kids and stuff like that, and they could be surviving, or they could be doing pretty decent. A lot of them are actually doing pretty decent, because there's multiple hours, man hours of travel nursing now. But the ego was getting a lot bigger because I feel like there was a time where it was a lot more well respected. Yeah, stepfather. But I think now because of the money, in my opinion, egos are starting to get like it's almost like if she didn't have kids, it's almost like that kind of ego. Like I don't have any kids, I'm doing this, but like the egos are just the same as she didn't. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's the money, and I think the humbleness, the ego coming into it. Like, hey, this is a man. It's going to be an asset. He's going to be a great addition. He's going to be a stepfather. He's coming into our lives. He could have chose any woman that had no kids, but he chose us. So, and he loved us enough to marry me, and to take on this responsibility where a lot of men wouldn't.
Okay, so the reason I chose those two clips is because that first clip, like I said, set the tone of this idea that women allow themselves to feel deficient. In my mind, my interpretation is that women allow themselves to feel deficient because they made the mistake of having a child, right? And so they make bad decisions. So then you have the second clip where the man is saying that a woman who thinks too highly of herself, or because I don't want to put words into his mouth, a woman whose ego, I'm going to use the words he used, a woman whose ego is at a certain level is not going to treat a man as if he is doing something I don't want to say doing her a service, but like that he is giving her a pass, basically giving her a pass and treating her as better than she deserves, because it's a clear classification between a woman who has a child and a woman who doesn't have a child. So he's saying that a woman who has a child should look at herself as less than a woman who doesn't have a child. Number one. Number two, a woman who is chosen by a man who has a child should, again, look at herself as if, oh, well, he chose me when he could have chose another woman who didn't have a child. So there's a certain level of gratitude, which, first of all, any person choosing to be with any person, whether you have a child or not, whether you're male or female or not, there should be gratitude, I feel. In anybody choosing to share space with you and take you on and do life with you, you should be grateful to that person, no matter what your circumstances are. Okay, so that's just a baseline of letting you know what I believe. But he's saying that especially a woman with children should give special credence to the fact that the man has chosen to be with her and to take her on as a as a financial burden or liability. Now, mind you, I do not disagree with the idea that a man that has, especially a man that has no children of his own, coming into someone's life and saying, well, I'm going to take on that role. I'm going to step up. I'm going to be that provider and protector for the woman and her children, is a phenomenal person. You know what I mean? And definitely should not be disrespected. Definitely should be cherished and respected and all of that. However, I do not believe that shouldn't be the case in any relationship. You get what I'm saying? Like, I do feel like that person could sit and say on themselves, oh, wow, I really, really appreciate that. But this idea that you're going in as a single mother to that situation, like, oh, well, I'm at a deficit. Like, I'm lucky, not lucky like any other person is lucky to have someone love them or choose to love them, but lucky because, I'm just bottom of the barrel type of thinking. I feel like even if that's not what he meant, that is the general overtone of how they speak about single mothers and how we should think of ourselves going into situations. Now, that is very relevant to what I'm talking about tonight, because we're discussing the different approaches single mothers take when it comes to dating, coupling, sex. And we're talking about the effects that it has on the children and their relationship with their children. So I've broken it down into 3 different viewpoints, 3 different ways that I find women kind of handle dating and mating as single mothers. The first one is male worship. So that's kind of where the woman prizes having a man over all things. And it's just like, it doesn't matter what the cost, having a man be there in that role of the man of the house or of their man is paramount over everything. Then there's male avoidance. So there's the women that are just kind of like, I've been burned before. I don't want those problems, or I don't want any male around that might hurt my children. It's too much for me. I'm going to focus on being a mother, right? And then there's the third, which I call fracturing. And I was a fractured single mother. The way I said it, I was like a mom Monday through Friday, and then I was a woman on the weekends. So what I would do was I would just do what I need to do during the week when I had my daughter, and on weekends where she would go away either to her grandmother's houses or other family or whatever, I would do me, like I would go out, and it's not just a thing of like dating. There's the women that are just really like, I got to live it up on the weekends. I got to get it in. You know what I mean? So we'll get more into that when we get to that point. But we're talking about the male worship one. So I have another excerpt from my book that I want to visit, and we did that one. I read that one. Oh, so I have a video here. This is from, I don't know how to say his name. Is it Kize Lehman? And he is the author of Heavy, an American memoir. And so let me go back to, am I still showing this? I'm going to get smoother with it as time goes on. So anyway, this is a book reading for his book, Heavy, and he was doing a Q&A. And I need to get this to stop just immediately playing. I don't put I don't pay for ad free playing either, so we won't catch these ads. Ooh.
I told you if we broke attendance records, I give the church
just muted for now. Sorry about the empty air. I have a lot of clips and stuff though. I really did a lot of preparation for this, so just skip it now. All right.
Closer to my father, it makes me feel closer to my mother. And so, like, fam, like, all I'm trying to say is, like, it's sort of complicated. Like, I realized that my mama needed a loving partner, a generous, tender partner, far more than I needed a present father. I mean,
I'm going to stop that because I wasn't sharing it.
It's going to be hard
so I want to make sure you caught that. This was 33. 33:30.
Me, I'm a professor at Vassar. He's running from something. He won't talk to me about what he's running from. He goes to sleep on my couch. And for the first time in my life, I think I see what my mom must have seen in him to fall in love with him. And so in that moment, it doesn't make me feel closer to my father. It makes me feel closer to my mother. And so, like, fam, like, all I'm trying to say is, like, it's sort of complicated. Like I realized that my mama needed a loving partner, a generous, tender partner, far more than I needed a present father. I mean, I'm open to hearing all kind of stuff, but it's going to be hard for somebody to tell me that's not true. Like, I didn't need a present father. I saw what present fathers did in a lot of houses in my neighborhood. Present? Like, that's all we talk about black men. Can you just be present? Like, like, fuck that present shit. Like, we're not even like, can you be a loving father? Like, I definitely needed a loving father, but nobody talks about that. They're just like, was your daddy there? You know? Do you know what I'm saying? And so, in the absence of a present father, I did have a loving, like, community, you know? And I would actually, you know, my family would argue with this, but I think I had a loving, like, queer community that, like, is part of the reason I'm here right now. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to evade that question. I'm just trying to say my father went through his stuff. I've listened to him talk now in the last few years about what he went through. But growing up, I never had that moment where I was like, I miss my daddy. Never had that shit. I mean, I tried to use that. I tried to manipulate my mom sometimes to be like, why can't I have a dad? You know, like, I seen some white boy on TV say it or something, you know? Because I wanted, you know why I said it? I remember why I said, you know why I said it? Because I wanted a peanut butter parfait. I don't even know what y'all know. Y'all might not even know about peanut butter parfaits. But I was like, my mom picked me up from my boy house. She was like, what's wrong, Key? I was like, I just miss my dad, you know? And then she was like, what can I do? And I was like, can we get ice cream? You know? That's really what happened. And so, but one reason I didn't miss it was because there was a richness, man. Like, I was talking about this in New York, like, I understand that whole rose grows in concrete metaphor. I'm not going to diss Pac for saying that, but I didn't grow up in no fucking concrete. I grew up in rich Mississippi soil that white folk tried to turn into concrete, but we resisted.
Okay. So, that kind of started. I mean, this is really good. Like, you should watch it if you get a chance to. But it's really, really important what he said there, that he didn't need a present father as much as he felt like his mother needed a tender partner. And this resonates so much with me because there was a point in time, and I speak about it in depth in my book, where I was chasing my oldest daughter's father so much because I just wanted to have that man figure in our lives to complete the family. Excuse me. To complete the family. And I remember, like, my baby father, I begged him to come stay with us at one point. My daughter was like 8 years old. And he was in the house for a couple months. And I remember, like, that whole thing ended. It didn't end well. Like, he didn't necessarily do anything to it. Was just the whole bit. My mental health suffered. Everything suffered. And I wound up losing my house. But it was after, like, all of that had happened and the dust had settled. I had a discussion with my daughter, which was his daughter. And I remember her saying to me, like, when he came in the house, it was just like, what is he doing here? She was just like, we were fine without him. And I felt so bad because I had to reckon with, like, it was me that wanted him there. You get what I'm saying? Like, we were finally stable. I had been through coming up and having to live with this person and that person and everything. And I was finally in my own spot. And in my mind, I just was like, well, you know what? Now that I'm in my own spot, maybe we can make a real go of it, since it'll just be us. We won't have anybody interfering, which was people just saying, hey, leave him alone. Let him go. He don't mean you no good. You know what I mean? But in my mind, I just was like, well, we'll have the space to really get to know each other, to really, build something here. And she let me know the way that it impacted her. And, like, none of it was that rich, wholesome experience, white picket fence experience that I told myself that I was trying to create by, bringing him into the house. So it's really, really important for us as women to understand our womanly needs and to recognize and own our womanly desires, so that we don't confuse them and conflate them with our responsibilities and our desires for our children. You know what I mean? There's also another clip here. I said that this one goes along with it, so give me a second here. This was the colorism. It was 2 hours and 49 minutes.
Exactly the same way and say the same thing. So I know it's Jared, but I find it interesting because Jared has gotten upset because, well, I'm not going to say why he's upset. Anyway, sorry, Timothy, I have to hop off. It's been a delight as usual. I know, I understand you gave us way too much of your time. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here, and have a wonderful day. Vitamin, take it away.
What I want to say is, what women want, unfortunately, and this goes back to your point of saying that what the lady with the other channel, the one Pink Pill kept saying was cute, Chantel was saying, is dangerous, because there are women that really just want to be wanted, and women that really just want to be chosen, and women that want to have that dream. And so they are willing to bend, and they are willing to slave, and they are willing to prop up, these bodies in the space of the man of the house in order to try to have as close to what they think they can get to that. And the problem with that is that it is this manosphere rhetoric that causes these cycles of these very things that they keep saying aren't real. Because you have these women making these concessions and bringing these unstable men into these houses who get in their feelings or weren't right to begin with. And then they came in because this person is clearly not, strengthened in their spirit enough to be able to say, you know what, I can wait, or I can try to choose somebody who might be a little bit more challenging or something like that. They'll come into these spaces and they know, because if you go into these spaces, these manosphere spaces, they know what they're doing. They are preying on these people. They know when people's self-esteem is low. They know when they can slip in and, oh, girl, you're going to hit the wall. Oh, girl, nobody's going to want you. You're average at best. They can come in and get in where they fit in, and then they go ahead and chip away at you. Then, God forbid, you wake up, now you have some kids or something, where you just don't want them anymore. And then all of a sudden, you're the bitch that's keeping them from their kids. You're the person that's doing this, that, and the other. Then they call off and kill you because, quote unquote, you ruined their life. And then it's your fault because you didn't pick right.
Yeah. By the way,
okay. Yeah, so that was the end of that. So yeah, we're talking about the fear of missing out. You know what I mean? When we're in this space and we're talking to single mothers and we're saying to them, like, you don't really deserve the type of man that you were always thinking you would have gotten before you had a child. You don't really deserve that. You know what I mean? So there's already this imprinting of this idea that what you deserve is less than, loving, happy to be there, willing to care for you, willing to look out for you, willing to comfort you and secure you. There's already this imprinting of this idea that is not what you deserve now that you've become a single mother. So now you're a single mother, you have this kid, but if you still desire a relationship, the question becomes like, how do you work that in? So some of us will sit there and say, oh, well, like he was saying, he needed a loving father more than a present father. But we'll think, oh, well, we just need to have the father there. So then we'll dig our heels in with the father of the child, you know what I mean? And open ourselves up to all kinds of hoopla, which interestingly enough, like the same people that'll sit and say, oh, well, you should have chose better, yada, 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 will then turn around and say, well, you need to work it out with the father. But like he said, that's not always the best option for the child. So then you have people who will go a different route and say, oh, well, the father's gone, there's nothing we can do about that. And then they go into a new guy. So I have a clip from a show. It's called Monsterland. So spoiler warning. I don't know if you watch that show, if you plan to watch the show, if you've seen this episode. It's from an episode called New Orleans, Louisiana. To kind of illustrate the bad position we can put ourselves in. Mind you, this is coming. I'm not saying, and I want to be clear about this because I know that some people may get a hold of this at some point, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but may get a hold of this and try to use it to say that I'm saying that, all single mothers just make bad decisions all across the board, that to reinforce these ideas that single mothers don't deserve certain things, that we're just bad mothers overall, we're just bad decision makers overall. But this is just, this space is for us to have real conversations. So when I'm talking about these things, please know that I'm not talking about these things in an effort to point the finger at anybody and shame them. I really want to discuss these things because what I had to do as a mother, and what I hope that we all start doing more and coming together and supporting each other in, is really having these conversations and having this internal dialogue and really questioning the choices that we are making instead of constantly making them under duress because of those people who are weaponizing these discussions. So let me go here. And let's
TV recap here.
Come on.
Today I'm going to explain.
So this is one of the channels that just kind of tell you what's going on. It's not it's not an actual clip of the show, but it works better in this case too because we don't have to sit here and watch a whole bunch of stuff. So this is 140. Okay. Share it. I'm getting better, y'all.
Cream. She starts panicking once more as she tries to find her husband and son. A few moments later, Annie sees George running so fast. She calls George and he hugs her tight. George looks dazed
so
and
let
scared.
me backstory. She is down there. That's her son. She's married to a new guy, or she's about to get married to this new guy that is not his father. And they're out at a place, and the baby's kind of acting a little off. He seems like he's just trying to get away from them, and that's where we are now.
As Annie tries to comfort him. Inside a medical tent, a nurse is seen.
Oh yeah, and also important, she went away from him and the stepfather. So the stepfather and him were together alone for a while. So just needed to put that in as well.
Tending to George, who is still dazed up until now. Joe enters the tent and asks Annie what happened. Annie says that George hasn't told her yet. The nurse asks Joe if he's George's dad, and he says yes. Annie clarifies that Joe is the stepdad. Joe narrates that George told him that he needed to go to the bathroom, and George started running away. Annie tries to convince George to tell them what happened. Eventually, George tells them that a monster is chasing him. He adds that the monster that chased him has black eyes and tried eating him. Annie clarifies if it's a person who chased George, but George says that he's sure it's a monster. It appears that George has a sprained wrist, and Joe wraps a bandage around it. Sorry. George is sleeping at the back of the car as they prepare to go home. Annie expresses to Joe her worries about George.
Okay, so here we go. This is a woman. She is a single mother. She meets a new man. He seems, prior to that part of it, like he was helping a little boy. The little boy wanted ice cream, and she was being the mom and just saying, hey, he don't need no ice cream right now. He's like, come on, he's okay. Get him some ice cream. So seems like he's a good guy. So then we'll move forward to, this is in the future. I believe it says it's 14 years in the future.
We see George leaving. Joe asks George a science question, but he answers incorrectly. Joe tries to hug George, but George avoids it and shakes Joe's hand instead. Joe tells George to come home before breakfast tomorrow as they have a flight to catch. George agrees and leaves. After the party, Annie...
Okay. So that adds more context to what's going to happen next. So 10 minutes and 20 seconds.
Lee runs to George and hugs him. The next morning, Annie tells...
Just want to give you... Sorry, I keep popping in, but I want to give you context. So come to find out, that night when George didn't want to hug him, they were having a party. The husband is a doctor. The husband was getting some kind of award. So they were having this big party celebrating an award. A friend of the husband, made a comment to the wife about being poor before meeting him or whatever. And she seemed offended. So then George wouldn't hug him. This other guy came to the party and was trying to say something. She stopped the guy, like had him escorted out. Then the next day, a friend of theirs comes and tells them that the husband is being accused of basically dealing with children, messing with children. So she's been going through it, and this is where we're at right now.
Tells George that the monster that he's talking about when he was a kid is inside their house last night. Annie apologizes to George for not believing him when he told them about the monster over a decade ago. George is clearly confused and asks his mom if she's on drugs or drunk. Annie says that she isn't and says that the monster broke the windows and the furniture last night. George snaps at his mom and tells her to sit down. He tells her that he wants to talk about what happened at the festival.
George asks Annie to say something, but Annie says that she has already forgotten what happened at the festival. George becomes frustrated. George tells Annie that Joe abused him at the parade, just like how he abused the girls. Annie dismisses this and asks George about the monster instead. George says that the monster story was all a lie, and the monster that he talked about is Joe. Annie screams at him and runs upstairs. George follows her up.
So I'm gonna pause that right there. So this goes back to my point in talking about understanding what it is that we really truly are looking to get out of being with any man. So both the fathers of our children and another man. Like, what does it mean to us to have a man in the house? What does it mean to us to have a husband? What does it mean to us to be chosen? Because we have to be really, really open with ourselves and intentional about understanding what that is, because those are the cracks that bad people can slip into to be able to take advantage of our children. And those are the things that'll cause us to cover our ears, cover our eyes. Let me see here. I'm gonna go ahead and let this part of it finish.
Upstairs and tells the whole story. When he and Joe went to get ice cream, they stopped at a bathroom and went inside a stall. That's when Joe abused George. George was able to run, and he found Annie in the crowd and told her everything that happened, but Annie acted like she didn't know anything. Annie explains that she pretended that she does not know anything because she and George had nothing, and marrying Joe is their quickest way into being rich. Annie tells George that he now has money and he gets everything that he needs and wants. George tells Annie that he's failing college and he's already on academic probation because his trauma is hindering him from performing excellently. George pleads to Annie to say that she knew what Joe did to him at the festival, but Annie says that she didn't know anything. George tells Annie that the reason why Joe married her is because she will keep her mouth shut in exchange for his money and the expensive things in life. George says that he feels drowning in life because of the trauma. Annie remembers the moment George whispered to her about Joe abusing him inside the bathroom stall. Her face looked surprised, but she didn't say anything. She leaves George and goes to the bathroom. Annie goes to the bathroom and George asks her one last time if she knows that Joe abused him back at the festival. Annie doesn't answer, and the disappointed George leaves the house.
Okay, so I'm not going to do the rest of it. There's a few minutes. Basically, she's hallucinating. She's been hallucinating this monster that he talked about all them years ago when he was just trying to appease her, and she pokes her eardrums out, and then she still hears the music, and finally she has to come to grips with what she's done. Now, I want to take a moment for everybody to just catch a breath. Again, I want to reiterate, this is not me saying that every single woman who tries to be with a man is willing to sell out their child. This is not me saying that every single woman who tries to live hypergamously, who has a child, is going to sell their child out to, a child toucher. I'm using this purely as an illustration because it was just convenient to illustrate the point that there are things. It may not be letting somebody touch your child, but it may be letting somebody around that's neglectful of your child. It may be letting somebody around that straight up shows open hostility and resentment towards your child. It may be somebody that flat out tells you, like, I don't give a thing about that child. What are we doing? And pretend your child does not exist. It may be somebody that you're just dealing with just to have some place to live. Because let's be real, we're not all messing with everybody. Don't got money like that, where she's saying, oh, he's getting his college paid for and anything he wants and needs. That is not our situation. However, again, it's about being honest with ourselves about what it is we're really trying to obtain, hold on to, achieve, that we would position ourselves and our children to have a situation like the guy was saying, where we have a man in the house, but he's not a present man, and he's not a man that's actually going to pour into the child and create a sense of stability and safety for the child. It's mainly for our comfort and our pleasure. Let me see here. I don't think this is that passage. It might be that passage, but I have another passage in my book. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is where I talk about. So in my book, I say, no matter how much you spend on extravagant clothes, toys, or trips, if you do not proactively deal with the negative feelings you harbor about the harsher realities of your situation, they will manifest in the form of mood swings, risky and or overindulgent behavior, and an unhealthy to the point of obsessive need to try and control people and situations that aren't, never were, and never will be in your control. So I have a list of things. I'm not going to go into each and every one. I'm just going to stick to the ones that are relevant to this conversation, but I will just highlight what they are. Each of them have like their own explanation, but I'm only going to go in and explain the ones that are relevant to this conversation. So she can be a combination of any or all of these characteristics. So there's combative, aggressive, permissive, neglectful, overindulgent. In this case, I want to talk about permissive. So under permissive, I said allowing her children to run all over her and anyone unlucky enough to be in their vicinity, and allowing men to use and abuse her and or her children. So what I'm saying is, like, it's clear she made a distinction. It's clear she made a choice, and she said, hey, we're poor. We don't have a lot of prospects. This man is providing us not only, shelter and provision, he's rich, so we can just live a life that we never would have been able to live otherwise. And like I said, even though we may not have access to that type of wealth and things, there are things that we feel like we can't get any other way because we are single mothers, or because we're poor, or because we're Black, or because we look a certain way. And if this person looks like they're offering it to us, that we may turn a blind eye to certain things. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be SA, but it happens. Like, we can't pretend. I don't want to be this place where we do like the others do and pretend that things that happen on our watch don't happen. You know what I mean? But I'm not here to lambast anybody. I'm not here to try to shame anybody, but we need to talk about it. We need to work on it. So we need to be really, really clear with ourselves and do that internal work to make sure that we are at a baseline of just sovereignty within our own lives, that no matter what's going on, no matter what someone else is willing to give us or not give us, that we're not going to fold on our integrity, and we're definitely not going to sell ourselves or our children down the river. So I thought that was very, very important to highlight the downfall of like male worship, male. And again, I want people to understand that I don't have a problem with people coupling and having relationships, but I would like to see more healthy relationships. There are so many people that are in relationships that are actually situationships, or they're in relationships, but it's like they're not really connected. They're just kind of there. They're going through the motions. I call it just being stimulated. Like, you're not being nourished. You're not being motivated. You're not being fed. You're just being stimulated. And so as to not just be what you think is dead, you'll just have this person there that'll stimulate you. So they'll give you some money, or they'll give you some attention, or at least you have a ring, or, whatever it is that you tell yourself to keep going. And so that was the male worship section of that. So then we'll go into the second section, which is male avoidance. I would say I'm kind of coming out of a male avoidance phase at this point. I just, when having gone through the fracturing part, which I'll talk about, I've been through all three of these phases, to be quite honest. Like I said, I spoke on just really, really digging my heels into trying to get and keep my oldest daughter's father in our lives. So then from there, I connected with my youngest daughter's father, and then like right after him, I went into this place of like, maybe I need to just stay away from it. So now we're in the male avoidance, and what that does is that creates a vacuum. It creates a deficit of healthy intergender interaction modeling for the children. So if your child can't see you interacting in a healthy way with the opposite sex, if that's what you're into, then it makes it harder for them. It's not impossible. Hopefully they may find other people, but it makes it harder for them to be able to pick up on how that looks, how that works. And especially if you have trauma behind it, you may even be imparting some of that trauma onto them without anything there to offset that for them, so that they can have like a balanced, clean slate going into the dating pool. You know what I mean? And again, these are just things that I feel like we should take into account. We need to be aware of. I feel like as a single mother, you know, we're just trying to get through day by day, right? So especially if you didn't have proper modeling, or you didn't have anyone to kind of navigate you through your generation's landscape with this, because some of us may have had a married husband and father, mom and a dad in the house, married, two-parent household, but they're coming from a bygone era. You know what I mean? So their whole attitudes about things are completely different. If you don't have someone who can equip you with what you need to navigate your current landscape that you're in, it still kind of doesn't help. You know what I mean? It can be tricky. And it's tricky enough for single people with no kids. So when you have children and you have to go through the day-to-day ins and outs of making sure they're okay, making sure they're fed, making sure they have what they need, it's tricky. It's hard. And like I said, a lot of this stuff we're not even aware of. I'm 100% sure that most people who may have gone through those things that I talked about in the first leg of this conversation weren't consciously saying, hey, I want to fuck my kids up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm feeling like fucking up a kid today. Nobody's thinking that way. However, this stuff is still happening. Like if you listen to the conversation in the community, even things that aren't about this specific conversation, but just the anger and the distrust and the contention between the men and the women, and it's coming from somewhere. And I was on Clubhouse earlier, and the lady was talking, and I agreed with her. She was saying like a lot of the reason that these men are so angry is because they're angry at their moms, and they're angry at their moms because of these types of things, because of their experience growing up. And I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. I feel like every individual has the right to feel some type of way if they feel like they weren't parented correctly. You know what I mean? But however, when you're coming in as an adult and wanting to have interaction with another adult in a way that has nothing to do with with parenting you, it's up to you to kind of get yourself right, because they don't deserve and they don't owe it to you to take that on, to be your whipping boy or your therapy punching bag or whatever, So with male avoidance, an example of that, I'm not going to use a movie, because I was watching somebody's live stream one time and they were using a movie, a widely known movie, to illustrate their point, and they were playing a little bit too much, and I don't know how much is too much. And as you see, I'm kind of struggling trying to move things back and forth, so I'm just going to kind of talk about it. Hopefully you've seen it. If you haven't, I don't know, I'll try to give you a little brief synopsis of what I'm talking about. But the movie is Carrie by Stephen King, and in that movie the main character's name is Carrie White. She's a teenage girl. I want to say she's like between 15 and 17. And she has a single mother who is a religious fanatic. And it's unclear, as I believe she probably was a religious fanatic when she got pregnant, but it sent her even more into kind of insanity once she became a single mother. And she is so deeply ingrained in like puritanical, patriarchal Christianity that she didn't even explain to her daughter about her menstrual cycle. So the beginning of the movie, the girl has her period in the locker room, and all the other girls are like traumatizing her further because she's bleeding out of her body. She doesn't know what's going on, and then the girls are laughing at her because she doesn't know what's going on, and she's just letting herself bleed, and she's hysterical. So there's that. On top of that, the girl just happens to be telekinetic, but that's a whole nother bag of worms. But that being said, her mother is a religious fanatic, and so she's getting no support, she's getting no help. And once she discovers her powers, she is invited to the prom. She goes to the prom, somebody plays a prank on her, and that kind of sets her off. So she murders a bunch of people. Then she comes home, and her mom is mommy. Her mom is doing what she does, and she actually winds up killing her mom because her mom is just railing against her for being a dirty, filthy hoe. It's just all types of stuff. Now, again, this is an extreme example because it is a drama. It's a theatrical movie. However, it may not be religion. It may just be that trauma speaking, that as mothers, we get caught up in this fear of, well, we don't want our kids to have happen to them what happened to us. And so then we just become so strict and stringent, and they can't do this and they shouldn't do that. And if they do it, they're bad. And if they're bad, they get punished. And, it becomes a cycle of abuse, really, because we're not really seeing them for who they are. And we're not helping them navigate these temptations, because that's really what it is. And it's why it's so frustrating for me to see people speaking of these things like, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. And it's like, how do you navigate? Yes, as a young person, I'm not even going to put gender on it because I really am kind of tired of people gendering the human experience when everybody is experiencing it. So as a young teenage child, especially in these times when you're being inundated with sexualized imagery and the idea that as a young child you should be sexual and or sexualized. So the young boys are being told that they should be having sex and conquering girls and acquiring girls and notches on their belt. And the girls are being told, you should be clean and pristine, but at the same time they're being showed these images of girls that are supposed to be their age, but these are 20-something-year-old women, and they're, everything is sexual. You know what I mean? They're being given all these different conflicting ideas, yet they're supposed to have a clear-cut focus of what they should do. And that's just baseline. We're not even talking yet about actually being in a situation where they like someone, you know what I mean? Where they're actually feeling in their body physical attraction, where they're actually feeling in their body that conflict of, oh, I know this is supposed to be wrong, but it feels right because I like him and he likes me, or she likes me and I like her, you know what I mean? And this doesn't just hurt. I'm sorry, my eye, something's in my eye. This doesn't just hurt young girls. You know what I mean? I'm not even just talking about this in terms of, oh, poor girls. It hurts the boys too, because the boys are being fed horrible information, whereas now we're in a time where we're kind of having an awakening, an understanding about consent and things like that. So they're in danger too, because even though they may not realize it, they're not right in what they're doing. You get what I'm saying? And now they can be held accountable to a certain degree. So that makes even more dissension between the adults who are used to doing this stuff and have been telling the boys to do this stuff. Now they're in a defensive mode where they're saying, well, there's nothing wrong with it. When it was something wrong with it, then it just was a different time. And then you got the girls who had something happen to them that shouldn't have happened to them, or it shouldn't have happened in that way, or what, whatever. There needs to be a discussion had, but they're being told either outright or through, the handling of it. So if they do have an essay situation and they're going there, they're being questioned in a certain way. They're being asked about what they were wearing, what they were doing, and how they, all of that. The person is getting off, or the language is being used. When you have a guy that sits there and drugs someone, drags them out to the back of a place behind a dumpster, is caught in the middle of this, but then have the judge there saying, oh, well, you know, his life shouldn't be ruined over a few seconds of pleasure. You know what I mean? Like, those types of things are happening. And the question is, where is the disconnect coming from? And so we need to be having these real conversations, not just about like what they need to do, but what we realize now about things we did and why we were doing them, and whether or not we regret them, or whether or not we would have done them differently had we known this or that or the other. Like and again, this isn't just a conversation, like I said, for women and mothers. I'm talking specifically to single mothers and stuff because we're here. But this is a conversation like everybody needs to really get real and honest, because there's all of us are kind of like in this defense mode. Like I said, people are trying to defend things that are indefensible, both men and women. And I'm just kind of going to leave that as it is. But yeah, I want to talk about in my book, that same passage, I want to talk about neglect was one of the things. So like I said, in the case of Carrie, her mother didn't even explain to her about her reproductive cycle and how that worked, and prepare her to be able to just, if for nothing else than for hygiene's sake. You know what I mean? So I say that we've all been and seen a single mother before. She can be a combination of any or all of these characteristics. And under neglectful, I say of her children. So she's neglectful of her children by not attending to their needs in the most basic of ways. That could be feeding, bathing, properly clothing, etc. So that will fall under etc. Not monitoring and establishing standards for academic performance and behavior, spending all of her free time with men or in the street. So that doesn't apply to Carrie's mom, but that's just falling under neglect. Then also, and this is something I see a lot with women, and this goes into the conversation about weight. We're talking about weight, right? So when you are avoiding of men, there are some of us who are so avoiding them. It's not even just that we're avoiding men, we're fearful of men. You know, so we really just are trying to repel men to a certain degree. So they will be neglectful of themselves as well. So you'll see them dressing down and things like that. This is not keeping herself reasonably presentable, isolating herself. This is neglect of herself, isolating herself and or her children unnecessarily, limiting her own options due to a sense of duty and or hopelessness. But I want to talk more about not keeping herself reasonably presentable. Now, when I say reasonably presentable, I'm more so talking about external things. I'm talking about, you know, just presentation and or hygiene. I'm not talking about weight, but weight does factor into appearance, and it does factor into, you know, people's opinions of you. So, and it is something that we, to a degree, can control, but nobody wants to talk about how stress affects weight, how stress affects eating habits, that affects weight, how stress affects sleeping habits, that affects weight. You know, like how all of these things that come, and it ain't just about, oh, well, she had a kid. It's also about dealing with men and dealing with people on top of the fact that she has a kid, and dealing with men and people and their opinions and the way they want to treat them or not treat them because they have kids, you know, so it all works in tandem. But we have women who, like I said, if you are neglecting yourself, and all of this goes back to modeling behavior. Like at the end of the day, we can say whatever we want to say to our children, but what we do is like 90%, I feel like, of raising kids is what you actually do, or how you behave, how you carry yourself, your integrity and all of that. And then 10% is like what you say to them. Because at the end of the day, you can be as, you know, hard on them as you want to. You can be as fearsome or whatever as you want to. But kids and just people, anybody that tries to dominate people, you usually find that people find a way to get around it. Like they'll just say, okay, whatever, while you're there, but then they do whatever they want to do on the back end. So you tend to, I found, because I was that like authoritarian type of parent when I was younger, because I thought that's what I had to be. There was the 18-year-old kid's interpretation of what a parent is supposed to be. You know what I mean? Into my 20s. But I've come to find that I've had so much more leeway. I've had so much more progress. I've had so much more success in parenting and being a leader and being respected and having my opinions and my commands respected when I recognized that I had to focus more so on what I was doing and how I was doing it so that I felt worthy of a certain type of treatment, both from my child and men and just people in general, because we don't really understand sometimes that we think people are just treating us whatever type of way. And it is like, I don't care whatever your opportunities are. Ultimately, it comes down to your character, what opportunities you take. So if you get an opportunity to exploit someone and you take that opportunity, that accountability is still on you that you exploited someone. Like, that doesn't change that fact. And a lot of people will try to, pretend that matters less than the fact that you put yourself in a position to be exploited, or you wound up in a position to be exploited. But I personally feel like, how they say, a woman is tested when her man has nothing, but a man is tested when he has everything. So if a man is in a position to exploit you and they exploit you, well, that is a indicative of who they are. And I'm gonna just, kind of leave that where it is. But it's really, really important for us to understand that whatever kind of respect that we want to command from the world has to start within us. And I teach my children about what I call the righteous voice. And for me, what my righteous voice sounds like is, you don't get to do that to me. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It emanates from within me. Like, it's not just words that I'm saying. It is an energy that says, you don't get to do that to me. I see you trying to diminish me. I see you trying to take advantage of me. I see you trying to lower me in order to lift yourself up. And I'm calling you out on it, and I'm letting you know officially and to your face that you don't get to do that to me. And mind you, this is not something that I feel like is exclusive to me. This is something anybody could do and everyone should do, if and when they feel. And like I said, it's not something that you can fake. It's not something that you can utilize to lower people, because if you're doing it as a way of trying to exalt yourself and push someone else down, then it's not your righteous voice. It's something else. You know what I mean? It's that stuff that I've been talking about all this time. It's that bullshit. You get what I'm saying? It's not that. But there is this righteous energy that comes when you realize that somebody is trying to diminish you, and you stand in your power and you stand sovereign, and you go, oh, no, that's not what we're doing. And so we all need to kind of work into tapping into that and checking and seeing if we're connected to that within ourselves. And if you're not, then you really need to do the work of figuring out why not. And working on how to connect with that, because it is through those, like I said, cracks that the bad guys, the monsters, can slip in and wreak havoc on us and our children, and thusly our community. So that is the second part, which is the male avoidance. Now, I think the juiciest part for me would be the fracturing. And I want to explain what fracturing is. I was trying to find a clip because I spoke about fracturing on Themis and Thoth's live one time, but I think he privated that live, so I couldn't get it. But basically what I was explaining was that we have young women. I know I went through it when I was a little girl, and I became old enough to kind of form opinions about the people around me and things like that. I recognized that my mother seemed very invested in having a man around. Very early on in my life, I recognized that there was this there was a lot of effort on her part being put into trying to find a man and spending time with men and building relationships with men and trying to, I guess, secure a man, if you will. And so that implanted in me not because having a man is a bad thing, but just because of the way she went about it or didn't go about it, it implanted in me this idea that you can't be a mother and a woman, so to speak. And this is me just kind of trying to give it language. But really, I just didn't feel like, because it wasn't modeled to me, I'm seeing, okay, there's woman priorities and there's mother priorities. And I'm seeing my mother prioritize these woman things, but she's not prioritizing motherhood. So in my mind, it's just like, well, you can't do both. You get what I'm saying? And that's something that I've carried with me all throughout my life. So I have that, and then I become a single mother. So now, like I said, I'm a single mother, and that was something I speak about landmines. I speak about landmines in a sense that there were ideas like that idea that were just embedded within me that I had no idea that was there. I had no reason to think of it. I had no reason to no awareness of it. But until it came into play, I did not know that it was there. And then once I became a single mother, it exploded. So there was that. There was some things about marriage that I didn't even realize until like within the last year or so. There was some stuff about marriage in there that kind of went off. Ideas about me as a woman, my value and things like that. Like I didn't have full awareness of it, but I was just picking up the aura in the air based on how people were acting and responding to me, that somehow my value was lessened, all types of stuff that is around us all the time, but it's not relevant until it's relevant. And then it became relevant and it was, chaotic. And so I'm running from that, and I'm trying to secure my only child's father at that time, because I'm figuring, oh, well, if I can get him to be with me, then I don't have to worry about a lot of this stuff. I don't have to worry about somebody preying on my child. I don't have to worry about being a throwaway woman or a statistic. I can have sex, and not have to feel bad about it, things like that. But that wasn't working out. So then it became a thing where it was just like, because I was trying, I wasn't that type of person that was just like, I try to be a realistic type of person. So like when I would feel like maybe he just didn't want to be with me, I'd just be like, okay, fair enough, whatever. Let me move on and try to find out. But there was that concern again that I can't be a mother and a woman. So now I'm like, well, how do I navigate this without alienating my daughter or endangering her? So then what happened was I fractured myself. I fractured my personality, and I started just being like very closed off and just hyper focused on being a mother. But when she wasn't with me, which wasn't that often, you know what I mean? Like I had a lot of help. I'm not trying to say I didn't have help. I had plenty of help. I was very, very blessed in both his family and mine. But what I'm saying is most of the time she was with me and I was a mother. So I kind of resigned myself to what I'm a mother first and foremost. But then when I would get those little spans of time where I would be free, I would just go buck wild. You know what I mean? Because I was coming from a repressed place. And so it's never a good thing to repress things. Like it can be a good thing. Being disciplined and being repressed are two different things. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are mistaking repression for discipline, because discipline is integrating all those parts of yourself, but then prioritizing and saying, well, this will get me the most benefit behaving this way, but still making, accommodations for those other aspects, like not discarding them, not dismissing them, looking at those other aspects of yourself as viable and vital and treating them as such. But when you're repressing yourself, you're just kind of rejecting yourself. It's just your shadow self. They talk about shadow work and things like that. So now it goes from being a part of your personality that you deal with in a mature way, in a disciplined way, to being something that you're trying to pretend is not there, which I think is a big problem in our community, if we're being honest. Not, and again, not just with women, not just with men, everybody just kind of trying to say that's not a part of me, that's not a part of my personality, you know what I mean? But then they're going overboard with it to a degree where it wouldn't even be that bad if they were just saying, yeah, I like that, you know what I mean? So there is a passage in my book, another passage in my book, page 44. So my self-worth was damaged by the pain and shame of getting pregnant under those circumstances. And I had put myself under tremendous stress and pressure to live up to the standard of motherhood I felt my own mother had failed to afford me. This triggered in me an obsessive need to redeem my value as a woman by getting my daughter's father to marry me, simultaneously achieving my goals of properly prioritizing her and her needs and satisfying my own carnal desires without having to sleep around. The result, however, was me rationalizing letting my daughter's father and other men use me as a living sex doll, using unprotected sex as a substitution for emotional intimacy, and idealizing my relationship with him as some cosmic event instead of the bad decision it was for years to come. And there's another part. Okay, so fully understanding what makes you tick will give you insight on how/why you tend to be so gullible when it comes to your child's father and maybe other people as well. It will also help you to clarify your intentions, making it possible for you to frame your intentions in the positive instead of in the negative. I'll give you an example. I felt that I would only attract low quality men because I was damaged goods and had baggage. So I assumed that my best bet was to not waste my time trying to get anything but penis from men other than my daughter's father, while waiting for him, the father of my child, to decide to marry me because he should already have had a vested interest in my child. But that kept me extremely limited, as opposed to me setting the intention of putting myself in the best position possible to attract a kind and caring man that would embrace both me and my child emotionally. And this goes back to those videos that I showed in the beginning, because it's really, really important to understand that wording matters, context matters, framing matters. So the problem that I have, like I said, it's not that I have a problem with men feeling like it should be taken into account that they could opt to be with women who don't have children if they don't have children. I don't have a problem with that. That's totally, completely reasonable and rational. The problem that I have is this idea that they are projecting that the women should be framing it in a way where it's like, well, I am actively acquiescing to accepting less because I am a single mother. You get what I'm saying? Now, mind you, you can have, I'm a bargain shopper, right? I'm a bargain shopper. So if I go to a store and I see a dress and I really like the dress, I like the cut, I like the color, I like the way it's made, everything. Love it. But I look at that tag and it's not marked down, I don't want the dress. Like part of buying things for me is making sure that I'm not paying full price, right? Things, not people, things. So what they're saying is that women should look at themselves as merchandise, because they use these things all the time. They talk about cars, they talk about all types of, goods instead of women. And they're saying to women that you should look at yourself as these things and value yourself the same way we would value something that would be marked down, and things would be marked down. What things are marked down? Damaged things, defective things, broken things, You know what I mean? Things that are just out of style, nobody wants. Those are when you're talking about lowering people's value, that's what you have to realize that is what you're saying. And so you can't sit and say to women, you should think of yourself this way as a lesser thing or a lesser entity, but then say to women, why are you doing this stuff? Why are you letting people in to abuse you? You shouldn't do that. You can't have one without the other, and you can't remove the other without that one. So it is counterproductive for them to sit and try to say, oh, well, choose better, but also value yourself here, not here. You can't have both. So I would pose that you might just need to shut up or, leave it to the people that actually have a connection to the subject matter so that they can say it in a way that's actually going to be helpful and effective. But that's just my 2 cents. So my next point when it comes to fracturing, because that's really what fracturing is about, is just basically kind of saying, like, I can't have a fully integrated experience for whatever reason, so I'm going to try and settle. And that's basically what we're talking about here. Like those clips I played at the beginning, and even all of this stuff is a form of settling. And what's so funny to me is they'll sit and say, oh, well, Black women and single mothers specifically should settle because someone's settling for them. Okay, fair enough. But again, you can't turn around and then say you shouldn't have settled, because this is all settling. So if you get it, it's a slippery slope to settling. You get what I'm saying? Now, am I saying that anybody should be expecting more from anybody than what they are willing to appreciate? Absolutely not. Because that's really what I'm saying about me. I'm a single mother. I am overweight. I am non-ambiguously Black. I have more than one child's father. You know what I mean? I'm not in a position to be anybody's sugar mama, but what I'm saying is, but I'm not accepting any and everything. And that don't mean that I'm saying, oh, he has to be 6 figures, 7 figures, it's not about that. You just don't come to me with that mindset of looking at me crazy because I'm not thinking of myself as here as opposed to here. Because this is what I really kind of want to drive home about this. It's not just that they're saying humble yourself. They're specifically saying you need to get it in your mind, woman, single mom, whatever, that there are other women who are here and you are not. And that's not the same as saying, hey, I want to love you, appreciate me. Those are 2 different, you get what I'm saying? And then especially when you're dealing with people who are either already coupled or who supposedly don't want they don't want you. You know what I mean? Like people who are sitting and saying, I don't want a bigger woman, or I don't want a single mother, or whatever. Why are you talking to me? Why are you talking about me? You do not have a vested interest in my well-being. You get what I'm saying? Because you don't have to have a vested interest in, being with me or doing anything for me per se. But you also don't get to criticize me if you don't. You get what, like, you don't get to criticize someone that you don't want good things for. Because then it's just criticism, and any and all just criticism that's not constructive. That's not meant to, build up. That's not positive. And it doesn't have, like I said, a lot of the things that I know that I said in this live tonight are not pleasant things. They're not things that, women and single mothers, certain people are probably going to be offended and upset that I said it, because it might be triggering. You know what I mean? But I'm still saying it lovingly, like I'm saying it lovingly. And we can have that conversation. I'll be willing. And I'm also saying I can understand. I can empathize. But when you're coming from a place, I don't understand. You're just wrong. Something's wrong with you. You're wasting your breath. And if you're wasting your breath, then what are you really doing? You're not helping anybody. You're really just kind of venting and you're projecting. You get what I'm saying? Like, at this point, we need to call a spade a spade. You're not helping women by shaming them. You're not helping women by telling them harsh truths, because again, truth is subjective. And the funny part about it is that, like, men will sit and say men are logical, women are emotional. But logic is also subjective. Logic is subjective to your objective. So yeah, if your objective is to just sleep with as many women as possible, then it is logical to lie. It is logical to pander. It is logical to manipulate, because that's probably going to be the quickest way to achieve that objective. But if I have my eyes on something else, if I want someone who is a different way, then of course I'm not going to look at that as normal behavior. Of course I'm going to denounce that behavior. Of course I'm going to say, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? But to sit and act like I'm crazy for feeling that way, my objective is different. And now, then the argument becomes, oh, well, you shouldn't have that particular objective. Like, you shouldn't have that expectation that someone would interact with you on that level because, oh, you're a single mother. You're this, you're that, blah, 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 blah. Fine and good. It's always a thing of, oh, well, the likelihood of it, statistically speaking, you won't. I don't need a bunch. I need one person. I don't need one person. But here's what I know. I'm going to have a bunch more bullshit thinking the way you want me to think. I'm going to have a bunch more hard times for me and my child thinking the way you want me to think than I will if I really truly get into that righteous space of knowing who I am, of knowing my worth, of sitting in it and owning it and not allowing outside forces, outside voices to dictate to me what my worth is, then eventually I will cross paths with someone who is aligned with that mindset as well. And we can both move forward and appreciate each other and raise these kids and maybe have more children. You know what I mean? But we're never going to get anywhere if, because I was watching something and this guy was talking about, men don't care. Men just don't care. You say they want, but they don't care. That's fine. I for one, I recognize that they don't care. But what you have to understand is women are trying to talk and they're trying to explain and they're trying to reason and they're trying to do all of this stuff with the men because they do care. But what happens, I know for me, because I'm a very hopeful person when it comes to people. Like, I generally like to believe that people can be good and err on the side of positivity. But the minute I realize that you are a dead pool in that sense, there won't be any more conversation. There won't be any arguing. There won't be any debating. It'll just be okay. So, it is what it is. Like, I don't even know what else to say about that. So, yeah, that's it. I'm going through everything in here. I ended where I wanted to end, on the point that I wanted to end on. I do want to play one last clip though to kind of take us out, that I feel like kind of encapsulates everything that I was trying to say tonight. So I'm going to go ahead, play that clip, and then I'll do the outro. I want to thank you guys so much for being here with me. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and play the clip, and then I'm going to play the outro, and then I'm going to do the send off. So let me just go ahead, find that clip, baby. Shows, library. Oh, sorry, y'all. I thought I was in my other account. See, now I got so many different accounts that let me pause it. And this is 3641.
It's scary, it's dangerous, but it is what is going on every day, all day.
Absolutely. And maybe this could be because when you were telling this story, it was about your second child's father. So how did you come? You knew that by the time he came around, that you weren't gonna dig your heels in and yes, you weren't gonna let him take advantage of the fact that you wanted a family. But by the way you wrote the book, I can tell that that's something that you had experienced before. What would be your advice to a woman who is digging her heels into a relationship that she knows is not fruitful, it's not going to go where the man is of low quality because he chooses to be of low quality, but she wants her family and she wants to not be a statistic so bad? What would you tell her in terms of leveling up?
Statistics are on paper. You know, statistics are not human. Statistics don't live your life, and you have to create a life that is livable. So it's a choice whether or not you want to suffer in order to not show up a certain way on paper, or if you want to have a life that when you close your eyes for the last time, you are satisfied with your experience.
Absolutely. Wow. That is, now, if you can't look at yourself and if that's not clear, I don't know what is, because that was just too real. Now, if you can't look at yourself and ask them type of question, you don't need to be looking at yourself, because that right there should answer any doubts about if you should stay in this situation or not. That question to yourself, right? Do I want to stay in this mess, self-created or not? Do I want to stay in this mess so that I don't appear to be a certain way on paper or to other people?
And mind you, people going to interpret what they interpret regardless what's on the paper anyway.
They're going to judge you regardless.
They're going to judge you regardless. That has nothing to do with you.
Exactly. Or do I want to do something about my life and make different choices? And I just absolutely love that. I do want to go ahead and I want to ask.
So yeah. So I just wanted to kind of end on that. I am really excited. It came out exactly the way I wanted to. I got all my points out. That's really, really important to me. Like when my mind goes, pew, 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 pew. So I'm always really concerned whether or not I can be clear and concise and also fit everything in that I feel like is relevant to the conversation that I'm trying to have. So I'm pleased. I don't know, but I implore you guys to let me know in the comments, like, share, subscribe. Also, the book Level Up, The Single Mother's Guide to Reclaiming Her Dignity is for sale on Amazon. I do have the link in the bio, as well as I believe the link to my Instagram is in the bio. And also, if you want to watch the rest of that interview, that is with Rose Gold of the Heartbreak Hill podcast in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I believe. You can go ahead and click in the playlist section of the Level Up Single Mom YouTube channel, and I have a playlist of interviews. I will be adding more as more come in. There's one that's missing. I thought I uploaded it, but I didn't. So if you want to see more interviews about the book, you can go ahead and go there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I thank you so much for watching this. If you're watching the replay, I appreciate that as well. Please, like I said, join the conversation. My email is, let me put my email. So this is my, yes, I spelled it right. This is my email, Kiana at levelupsinglemom.com. You can email me there if you have any questions, concerns, any ideas, things you want like to see me discuss on here. I'm very much so open to this. But yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm kind of tired. Still gotta prepare dinner. And this week is my oldest daughter's senior prom. She'll be going on her prom on Friday. So I have a lot of things to do. I was kind of glad to do this because this was like a welcome break, something that I could focus on me about, because like for months and months and months, it's just been that, and it's been a very stressful situation. But yeah, enough about that. Thank you so much for joining me. Please join me again next week. I will be posting the thumbnail for this live. It's sometime during the week. I did 4 different thumbnails. It was for subjects that I just stood out to me when I started the page that I wanted to talk about. So I will pick the next thumbnail. But again, if you have any ideas, you may trump the ones I already have. So just email me, Kiana at levelupsinglemom.com. You can also hit me up on Level Up Single Mom on Instagram, and I am on Facebook. It is a group, Level Up Single Mom. But other than that, thank you so much. I can't wait to read your comments and everything. And I will see you next week for another Woman Chat Wednesday. All right. Bye-bye.